The Northern Governors Forum has called for calm following the killing of Deborah Samuel, a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education, Sokoto, over alleged blasphemy. The governors issued a statement following fears that protests in Sokoto State over the arrest of suspects in the killing of Deborah will spread to other states. Chairman of the forum and Governor of Plateau State, Simon Lalong, said the forum is concerned about the state of things in Sokoto. The governors noted that any attempt to adopt self-help in addressing grievances, whether religious or otherwise, could lead to further chaos. Meanwhile, the Ohaneze and Igbo Worldwide, an Igbo umbrella group, is demanding that authorities in Sokoto State bring to book those involved in the destruction of properties and business outfits belonging to Igbo during the protest by some Muslim faithful in the state. While condemning the act, the group wondered the nexus between Igbo traders in the state and Ms. Deborah Samuel, an indigene of Niger State who was killed for alleged blasphemy against Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, to warrant the destruction of Igbo properties. A statement by Chidozie Bonner, the National Publicity Secretary of Ohaneze and Igbo Worldwide, called on the governor of the state to mitigate the losses incurred by the Igbo traders in Sokoto State. Also, Islamic Cleric Ahmad Gumi has condemned the killing of Deborah Samuel, a student of Shehu Shagari College of Education in Sokoto, over alleged blasphemy. Gumi, while condemning the act, says Prophet Muhammad did not at any time kill anyone, despite the fact that he was insulted several times. Gumi said that while conducting a religious teaching class in his Kaduna Jumat Mosque, Gumi said the Prophet's refusal to avenge the insults of non-Muslims were raining on him while he was alive was because he did not want to be regarded or tagged as a killer. The cleric said anyone who kills a non-Muslim they have agreed to live peacefully with will not smell the fragrance of paradise for 40 years. A lot to unpack, Tundu and Dr. Abata, this one. Tundu, you first.
Well, I'm going to start with Sheikh Gumi, and he's absolutely correct. This is un-Islamic as far as I'm concerned, and he's doing the right thing by really pointing that out. At this point, where this kind of mob mentality and complete hysteria seems to have taken over, the only thing that can be done now is if government at all levels step in to call for calm, like you said, the Northern Governors Forum have done, and Islamic clerics to really devote time to educating people properly on the appropriate response to incidents like this that cost this poor young woman, Deborah, her life. There should be proper education on what to do. I think that really, in terms of what she actually did or said, why did she have to die? And unfortunately in this country, and it is unfortunate, it's disgraceful actually, that we have Sharia law in some states of this country. But even Sharia law, you're only subject to Sharia law if you are a Muslim. Sharia law, you will be charged to court. Blasphemy is a crime under that law. You can go to court for blasphemy, and it's a court that will hand down a sentence, not a mob taking matters into their own hands and committing murder. She wasn't tried. She wasn't killed, to execute a court judgment. None of that happened. So it's really just so appalling what has happened. And Sheikh Gumi is right to have done what he did. And I really hope that other clerics of his standing, and just anybody really who has any kind of a voice, because other people cannot convince Muslims. You cannot, as a non-Muslim, educate Muslims on their, deen and how to conduct themselves as Muslims. You're just some kind of infidel ranting. So it's people like Sheikh Gumi who are respected, who will be listened to give this kind of really important reminder that killing people is just not the way to go forward. There was a gentleman, I remember in Egypt, because here in Nigeria, sometimes I think we're a bit more Catholic than the Pope. There was a gentleman in Egypt, some billionaire, that had this poster which was deemed to have been mocking Muslims, of Mickey Mouse dressed like a Muslim. And it caused a lot of offense. And some people wanted to go attack him. And they were told by their clerics then not to do that this is a billionaire. What we're going to do is just boycott his products. And that's what they did. So this is the importance of education. This is the importance of, giving people the appropriate direction. Now the Northern Governors Forum has called for calm. They have to, because it's extremely easy for something that happened in Sokoto to then spread. Because really the most tragic and stupid folly that we exhibit in this country is intolerance. Whether it's along religious lines or along ethnic lines, which is what the Ohaneze and Igbo have also mentioned. What on earth do Igbo traders have to do with this? Some people have just decided to take any opportunity to exploit it. divided and just cause chaos and devastation on other people. We really need to work on ourselves as a country and really build this nation. We're really a long way to go, and this makes it obvious. This lays it bare.
Well, it's good to push part of the responsibility back to religious leaders on both sides, on all sides of the divide. Because sometimes you wonder, how some religious leaders push the doctrine. Even as we have Sheikh Gumi and other leaders in the north and in different parts of the country condemning what has happened. After the incident, there were some persons who were spewing, the rhetoric of religious hate, which I thought was scandalous, that anybody will come forward and justify the killing of another human being on the basis of such a person expressing whatever opinion. The person, nobody deserves to die in that gruesome manner. But we have this issue with, religious freedom, with religious intolerance in different parts of the world. In Denmark the other day, it was a cartoon that caused our problems. Here in Nigeria, we have had a past famous incident involving a young lady called Isioma Daniel. Okay, so this is about intolerance. This is about lack of interreligious harmony or understanding. And you wonder why you have a body like the Nigerian Interreligious Council. This must be a big embarrassment, to that particular body, because their efforts over the years, have been targeted at making sure that, Nigeria grows, develops a culture of religious tolerance, and that it goes all the way down. And that is why, the clerics truly, have a responsibility. Already, the Christian Association of Nigeria is saying that no member or, or branch as an association should ever attend the meetings of the Interreligious Council. And that is an expression of frustration. The Christian Association of Nigeria is even threatening to go all the way to the ICC, International Criminal Court. It is threatening, that, its members, if they are forced to begin to retaliate, that would just cause, more problems for Nigeria. And all of this coming at a time when Nigeria is preparing for elections. Imagine if this were to have happened, during the elections, and then it escalates, which is why I think it's important that the Sultan of Sokoto spoke up almost immediately. The Bishop Matthew Hassan Kuka also immediately issued a statement when the incident occurred that this is not about religion, this is criminality. All of that, to douse tensions. And then the state government went ahead and imposed a curfew when a group of young men and ladies, started protesting that those who killed Deborah Samuel should not be arrested and they should be released. Of course, they should be arrested because this is just pure criminality. Whatever may have been the source of provocation is pure criminality. And I think that the school authorities, that Sheikh Shagari College of Education, where they didn't act swiftly enough. Even if we were told that the security personnel, they tried to protect her, put her somewhere, they should have called for help. Immediately, the event happened. And, the thing, of course, is that schools should learn from this. They have to be more sensitive, more attentive, to incidents like this. Because it took a short while before the lady was attacked, according to one account, at the security post where the security personnel in the school tried to hide her. However, also, the most scandalous part of it is the pain of the parents. I read a front page story this morning with the mother saying the deceased is the second of 7 children, and that she will not allow any of her children to go to school again, just because of this situation. What's still in that report is the fact that they say that the state government did not contact them. Nobody deemed it necessary to make a phone call to the family. And the father was saying that when he went to Sokoto, they said, oh, she should leave, he should not bother to take the remains away. But as he insisted, he got no assistance. He paid 120,000 to take the remains, from Sokoto to their village in Niger State. Imagine that agony. I mean, it's terrible. They make it look like, it's a sin to be a Nigerian. and to find yourself in certain circumstances. You know, everyone who has condemned this, yes, you know, any right-thinking person will condemn this particular behavior. And the police should not be intimidated. Those persons who have been arrested, who have been identified as the perpetrators of this heinous killing, must be made to face the full wrath of the law. If you commit a crime, you do the time. Unfortunately, this will not bring back Deborah Samuel. Her life has been cut short, her dream has been altered, and her family has been put in lifelong agony. Imagine the cost of the parents saying, no child of theirs will go to school again. It's terrible. It's terrible. It's terrible.
Here we go again. Nigeria fails all of us every day. The only offense I see that Deborah committed was the fact that she was a northern girl that wanted to seek education and better her life. Most importantly, her greatest sin here was that she was a Nigerian. How do you even imagine that a school that is supposed to be a condensation point for ideas have become a bastion of intolerance? A school where people are supposed to have crossnicks of ideas have become a place where you are killed because of intolerance. But you see, the Nigerian state too should search its conscience if it's got one. Because over the years, it's not today this started. We've had numerous cases. What did the state do about it? What did the state do about Eunice Olawale, whose only crime was that she went around preaching in a neighborhood and she was found killed with a microphone where she evangelized? Who did she offend? Nobody. What did the state do about Bridget? Bridget's same blasphemy was the accusation. She was beheaded in Kano. What did the state do about Bridget? Nothing. What did the state do when the Isioma you talked about, Dr. Abati, a deputy governor of a state, went on a radio station to pass a fatwa on a journalist? A deputy governor. What did the state do? Nothing. Till today, Isioma still runs around. She can't settle back in the country she loves. So when you look at all of this, what has the state done to stop all of this? This is a crime. This is against the laws of the land. Killing, stoning to death, like Stephen was stoned to death, and burning the person alive. This is double jeopardy. And on top of that, some people still say the people that perpetrated this crime should be released. And we're not doing anything about it as a state. We'd like to see how justice is done. Because nothing can bring back the soul of Deborah. Nothing. Even if justice is done 1,000 times, it wouldn't bring back, it wouldn't heal the pain. And you know what this will do? This will discourage over 10 million girls that are out of school in the north. Now, why should they truly go to school? The numbers are staggering. 18.5 million people out of school. 10 million of them are girls. You heard what the mother of Deborah said. So apart from all of this, apart from the call for religious cleric to come in, which I believe too, they should do a lot of work at educating the people and really religious tolerance. Khan is upset about it. They have every right to. But in being upset, we must also come together because we need to build a tolerant and stronger society, and we can't do that in anger. I know we are hurt, but we must calm things down. But apart from it, the state must take action. Because if people that perpetrate such crimes are made to face the full wrath of the law, then it will be obvious that this is not acceptable in this country. We can't live in a country where everybody run mad. We all have a right to run mad. But you know why we temper our madness? Because there are laws of the land that we all should obey. And those laws talk about the sanctity of human life. This is a crime. This is a crime. What has Nigeria become? What has Nigeria become? No matter the analysis and the post-analysis and the trying to understand the ethics of blasphemy will not bring back this girl. Everything we are going to be doing is just going to be medicine after death. We need to build a stronger state. And this must. And other cases too. The states too must revisit the case of Eunice Olawale, revisit the case of Bridget, revisit the state of people that have been killed. It's a challenge to the states this morning, but will they take it? Till date, do we even know how the former Attorney General of this country was killed? That's all on News Headline. We'll take a short break. When we return, we'll have Rosa Zodiri, Michael Wilson, Aaron Akarijola to give us updates on Africa, global business, sport and activities across the globe. Stay with us.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rosa Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotas.
Good morning, Tundu. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning, Rufai. Today we're talking energy transition, cryptocurrencies, and fiat currencies in Nigeria and Zimbabwe. Kick off in Nigeria. Vice President Yemi Osibanjo over the, I think it was over the weekend, penned an article in The Economist. And there it is. Yemi Osibanjo on the hypocrisy of rich countries' climate policies. He's essentially calling for the Western nations to essentially fund Africa's energy transition. And in the lengthy piece, op-ed in, well, actually it wasn't that lengthy, in The Economist, he talked about, you know, the fact that basically $400 billion is what is going to be needed above business as usual spending in order for Africa to reach its energy transition. He says the West, he used an analogy with telephone lines. So just because Africa was able to skip telephone lines and go to mobile phones, you can't just expect Africa to just skip from fossil fuels to cleaner energy. And he's saying that the West should fund it, essentially. He used COP26 as an example in Glasgow last year, where South Africa received $8.5 billion, an $8.5 billion pledge to assist South Africa, which is very coal dependent, on its energy transition. And he says other African nations deserve, well, his recommendation was $10 billion a year for the next 2 decades in order to get Africa, the continent, on the path, saying that European nations should be less restrictive when it comes to Africa's use of fossil fuels. It's going to take time. That's essentially the gist of his article. COP27, as we all know, is going to be in Egypt this year. The African Development Bank spring meetings next week in Accra is going to be focused on energy transition. Last week in Abuja, the AFC one-day forum that was talking about infrastructure, there was a panel on energy transition. Nana Akufo-Addo and Yemi Osibanjo were on stage and even spoke about that. So the climate discussion, very, very heavy. Vice President Yemi Osibanjo of Nigeria is asking the West to put their money where their mouth is and fund this transition, because Africa can't do it alone. To cryptocurrencies, the Securities and Exchange Commission has released new digital rules for cryptocurrency. Now, you know, there's been an ongoing discussion between the SEC, the CBN, and the virtual currency community with respect to how to, you know, essentially regulate them properly. The SEC sees them as securities. And essentially has put us on rules. So although there's been some sticking points from the community, so if we take a look here at what the, I think this is the first page of the rules, they basically looked at rules on issuances of digital assets on securities. Well, it's 5 parts. Rules on registration requirements for DAOPs, digital asset offering platforms. Rules on registration requirements for DACs, digital asset custodians. Virtual asset service providers, VASPs, and then rules on digital asset exchanges. So they're trying to cover the whole gamut of the cryptocurrency ecosystem. But there's some costs. If we take a look at, I think this is, so this is where some folks have some issues. As far as digital assets offering platforms, the DAOPs, payments, this is it. So an application fee, 100,000 naira. Okay, that's not too bad. Processing fee of 300,000 naira. Okay, maybe that's not bad. A registration fee of 30 million, and then sponsored individual fee of another 100,000. On top of that, if we go to minimum paid up capital, there's a minimum paid up capital of 500 million naira plus a fidelity bond. Fidelity bonds are kind of like insurance for up to 25% of the minimum paid up capital. So what players in the space are saying is that this is really high, and it's only going to favor foreign companies which will be able to come in and play in the crypto space, and it's going to X out local players. And so they're suggesting that maybe this should be tiered. You know, it should be the paid-up capital should be broken down into different tiers to where local players can come in and get into the space. But look, the interesting thing is this it kind of puts the SEC at odds with the CBN, right? Because the CBN has said that financial institutions will not be allowed to facilitate cryptocurrency transactions. But the SEC is here taking the lead and saying, hey, they are securities. And by the way, there's another section, it's just like a 70-page or 50-something page document. I haven't read the entire thing. But I understand that there is a section where the SEC is also going to be collecting transaction fees from the players. So the costs are really high, but then from the SEC standpoint, these are very volatile currencies. You've seen what's going on with Terra USD and Luna. It's been, billions have been wiped off in market cap. Extremely volatile. I don't know, Bitcoin is when it's under 40,000, I think. It dropped to almost 29. So it's very volatile. So the SEC just wants to make sure it's properly regulated and make sure it's only serious entrants that are coming into this space. Right. But then, so again, there's this whole dynamic, and they've also said that the language in these rules are that they can actually increase the minimum paid-up capital and increase the fees if they feel they need to. They're also saying that every player that comes into the space, if you're doing an ICO, which is an initial coin offering, you have to publish a white paper that essentially details what your initial coin offering is about and essentially what is going to require. So it's robust. Now, what the issue, though, of course, is the costs that are associated. All right, finally, Zimbabwe. Oh, my goodness. So Zimbabwe now is saying that they're going to allow citizens with dollars to import goods and so on into the country. They're saying that it's because they want to curb prices of goods and services, goods that are rising substantially. Zimbabwe's inflation for April, I think, is 96%. All right, so costs are rising really high, and they're saying that, okay, look, essentially, if you have dollars, bring in import these items into the country. However, this is just going to demean the currency. It's also going to favor South African industries, because I think 40% of imports that are coming to Zimbabwe are in rand. So it's going to benefit them. It's just going to weaken the currency further. Just last week, we were talking about the new rules that they put in place to stop lending from banks so that, broad money supply doesn't go into currency speculation, all these other things they put in. But this is an admission that things are awry, and they're just, it's just not going to help the currency going forward. Tunde, we were talking about this online. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rotes. Well, I agree with the Vice President.
Yes,
I think I've talked about it with you before, about Kemi Adeosun. One thing she did that I thought was excellent right at the beginning of the Muhammadu Buhari administration was the IMF general meetings. This was in 2016, I think. Yep. And she went and she gave them a good telling off. She went to Washington and she let them have it on all our behalves. And she was completely right in the fact that why was the West creating stumbling blocks from us using our coal that we are blessed with to have our coal power plants that really fired what we know today as Western civilization. You get in the door and then you shut it and you bolt it behind you and say, no, now we all have to go green, and you have the same standard for everybody without taking into account certain moral and historical obligations that they have that we do not have. These arguments, you must have some kind of geographical context to whatever argument that you're making. So I completely agree with the Vice President. I thought his article was excellent.
I mean, it has always been the case. The West are big hypocrites. They'll always be. I think it was former President Olusegun Obasanjo that was speaking the other day at the AFC conference. And he said something very instructive. He said, okay, listen to what the IMF says, but don't do what they say you should do. And that was very instructive. So that's not about the West. But concerning Zimbabwe, I knew it was going to happen. Because when you try as much as possible to have, capital hold-offs and the likes, it's going to backfire on the economy. And you don't have adequate product on ground because the economy doesn't really churn out anything. So it becomes problematic. And they are reeling from that now. That's what I say, okay, bring in more dollars. Let's see how we can stabilize. Concerning, I want to say more in Zimbabwe because I just said 3 minutes more, so I have to be considerate. Concerning SEC, I'm excited. 5 years ago, still doing my radio show, I remember CBN will always send a circular. Anybody that comes to talk about crypto on radio, yank them off. And we lost a lot of revenue as radio guys because the crypto guys will come pay for life appearance, but we couldn't take them.
But you see, it just reminds me of what Schopenhauer says. Every great idea is first refused before it gets to the point of an orthodox idea. And that's where we are today. I'm happy about those regulations because it's good SEC securitizes them. Because a lot of these crypto guys to run amok. You need regulation. I mean, just like in fintech, I wanted to get into the fintech at some point, and they said the base minimum fee is $1 billion. This 500 million is good. The serious ones will cough out this money.
What about the local guys?
No, the local guys will cough out it.
They have the money?
The local guys are raising correct equity now, real monty. Let's not reveal them on TV. This guy, an average guy that's running a crypto exchange in this country is got, you know, capitalization worth into the billions because it's not only him. So a lot of those foreign companies too are partnering with the local guy because of local content. So yeah, they can do a tiarization, but that money is good for securitization. I mean, so that at least when the bubble busts, there's still a base point where people can, you know, recruit some of their assets and the like. So I think this is well in point, but it just shows that we are moving to a digital era of money. Let's go.
Well, Professor Oshibajo's piece, I think, is perfectly in order, and it made specific requests from the international community. I think the first thing is the support that he's asking for African countries.
Yes.
The second point is focused specifically on Nigeria. Nigeria needing up to about $400 billion. Three, they need to put a hiatus on this fossil fuel financing, which, you know, they talk about in every climate change event. And then also, you know, the solidarity about how the entire world can move together. As to his point about hypocrisy, well, that's well established, isn't it? Look at the commitments with regard to COVID-19 support for developing countries. How many of those Western countries that waxed lyrical about support for the rest of the world have been able to live up to their commitment? Look at the whole argument over technological transfer, you know, of know-how and all of that, you know. So African leaders, therefore, must take their cue from that. You know, every time we look up to the developed countries to help us, but ever so often, they disappoint us. What is missing in Professor Oshibajo's piece is the effort being made by these African countries themselves, you know, where development is even grossly uneven. But I like his point about Africa being the next frontier, about Africa being seen as a continent of opportunities rather than a place, you know, to be treated as second class by the international community. As for SEC, the big question is this. Yes, SEC is coming up with these regulations in the context of what is happening with cryptocurrencies or stable coins or digital assets globally. Only last week, there was 35% loss in terms of the value, you know, of the Terra USD that you referred to. And the main question raised both by the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Janet Yellen, and by the UK Treasury Department, is that there is need for regulation. So the SEC move follows in that tradition. And the position of the IMF also is about regulation. When IMF and the World Bank started complaining about the adoption of cryptocurrency as national currency in El Salvador and in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And the IMF is now talking about an international payment system, you know, that will prevent these distortions that these digital assets may seem to have introduced. But, you know, positions are pro and con. The question is, some people say cryptocurrencies are investments. Some people say, no, it's just pure speculation. Final question. Is there a contradiction between the position of SEC and the CBN, the Central Bank of Nigeria? Because I have not heard the CBN saying that it has lifted the prohibition that it placed on trading in cryptocurrencies and the facilitation of cryptocurrency payments, because the CBN was very clear and it hasn't changed its position up to now.
There is a contradiction.
That's right.
But the CBN set up a digital currency in Naira now. That's
regulated. That's
they are coming to the we will trade the e-Naira on exchanges too. It's as simple as that.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Moving on to more business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Mr. Wilson.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about Asia-Pacific markets, first of all, as I normally do. And they started off relatively positively. However, China came in with some rather disappointing numbers, not just about the growth in the economy, but also the rising levels of unemployment in various parts of the country. hurt by the latest COVID limits. Retail sales dropped 11% as opposed to an expected 6%. And China's 31 largest cities are seeing unemployment rising to about 6.7%. This is an average last month. As far as the United States is concerned, a bit of a high at the end of last week, a kind of slight relief rally, but futures slipped by about 186 points earlier this morning. On Friday, the Dow was up 466 points. I mean, this kind of volatility puts, investors who aren't very brave or aren't just similarly capitalizing on the movement of the markets into the sidelines. The retail season actually is upon us. The first quarter results from the likes of Walmart, Target and Home Depot, and also retail sales as well coming in. So we'll get an idea of how strong the US economy is in terms of consumer confidence and shopping. Jeff Bezos, who is now, I think he's the second richest man in the world after Elon Musk, he's criticizing the Biden administration on inflation. He's done it before. He was emphasizing to speech over the weekend that President Biden was saying, well, the deficit's shrinking. Bezos is saying, well, that's fine, but in fact, it's the poorer parts of the economy, as we've often noted on this program, that suffer as a result of inflation rising. The group of seven, the G7 finance ministers, agreed that they would continue to try to stifle Russia's intentions and to combat a wheat war, as they now call it, which is being waged by Moscow. Wheat prices up more than 60% since the beginning of the year, for all the reasons that we've rehearsed long and hard. But here's a new aspect to it. China was filling the gap, as was India. India is now effectively banning exports of wheat because they're worried about their own price pressures within the economy. And China was also warned or asked, I think is probably the better word, by the European finance ministers not to assist Moscow to justify Russia's war. Now, interesting thing about wage inflation in the UK. So we wake up to news this morning that EasyJet, which is one of the cheaper airlines, is offering £1,000 as a bonus to existing staff and £1,000 come on to people who might want to work there. That's exactly the kind of wage pressures that people have been going on about as far as inflation is concerned. However, in a completely separate report, more and more companies are now thinking it doesn't actually make financial sense to offer bonuses to get people on board. It's much better to actually train the existing staff. On inflation, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, will be appearing before a Treasury Select Committee today. There's a lot of blame now being attached to the Bank of England because of the rise of inflation and their perceived slow progress. If you actually look at the records of this, you could put Mark Carney in the frame for a lot of this. He was the one that on the Brexit vote actually cut interest rates in the country, not recognising or seeming not to recognise or indulging in what critics of the Bank of England term groupthink, i.e. they all think the same thing. I don't think that's necessarily true, but that's what its critics are saying. And we're going to see big inflation numbers this week in the UK. CPI will jump to 9%, but more to come in the coming months. So again, Bailey will be criticised for saying quite plainly a couple of months ago that he felt that any inflation pressures were temporary. And also, this is very important, this actually hasn't happened yet, but it's something to look for. The UK is going to be facing the biggest strike in modern history on the railways. There are 3 unions involved. The fact of the matter is that those railways were paid by the taxpayer to keep going during the pandemic. They're now going to have to introduce some cost cuts, which of course the unions are again between 2 and 4 billion. As far as commodities are concerned, Aramco, unsurprisingly, a record first quarter as oil prices rose. It belongs to Saudi Arabia and the government there. Oil prices really very, very volatile at the moment, and Aramco, as with all the other oil companies, profiting from the more calls for windfall taxes and all the rest of it. I would also draw your attention to how volatile it is, and all we have to do is go back to April the 20th, 2020, when in fact oil prices were negative. And finally, I just thought I'd throw this in right at the end. I know you've been discussing this on the programme before, not today, but last week you were. the European Union is looking much more towards Africa as a replacement for gas. Apparently, Africa will be, now you may not agree with these figures, but it's conservatively forecast to reach peak gas production of 470 billion cubic meters by the late 2030s. The problem, of course, is transmission and transport of the gas. But anyway, I certainly think that could be quite a way forward. And whether we talked about cryptocurrencies and support for green policies and all the rest of it, actually, the fact of the matter is, if you're exporting that amount of gas, it's going to give you a huge amount of African countries a lot of good. That's the global view this morning.
Your take, Mr. Wilson. I mean, you talked about Jeff Bezos and his criticism of Biden's Build Back Better plan, but the White House issued their own riposte saying that, of course, one of the richest men on earth is opposed to any plan to raise taxes on the wealthy, and that this is coming because President Biden has met with, labor unions, including Amazon employees. But where do you stand on that little spat?
Well, what I think is that it's very easy to look at people like Jeff Bezos and say, yes, of course, their riches should be taxed, and possibly quite rightly too. However, unfortunately, for the critics, they are providing something that people actually want to buy, and that's quite an achievement these days, isn't it? With Amazon and so on, and all this various products. I'm not excusing these people for being rich. I think that's a foolish game. As far as the United States is concerned, well, you can roll this back a bit, can't you? Biden was praising the Fed. And at a time when we actually thought they might be replacing Jay Powell as the Fed governor, because he's by no means a Democrat in the way that Biden is, but he hasn't, and he's actually supported him. And the U.S. government is praising itself on having on reducing the deficit. So I think you've got a lot of players in there. I wouldn't like to take any sides on it. My observation is that it's a long time before we'll actually see how this inflation story plays out. Are the Fed on top of it? Is it the way to go forward with interest rates rising? It looks like. Let's wait for the jobs figures to see what the US economy is actually doing. That's where I am on the spat.
I wanted you to comment on what is being reported as a looming trade war between Britain and the EU. The Prime Minister penned an opinion this morning ahead of his trip to Belfast. And he says he's going to rip apart the deal because the Northern Ireland protocols, agreed to before COVID, before the war in Ukraine. It's making it difficult for the UK to address the cost of living crisis. Is it just showboating, or he and Liz Truss don't care what happens with regard to the predicted trade war?
Okay, so as far as the trade war is concerned, I think it's certainly on the cards. It's such a tiny proportion of the EU's total business. I feel as though they are hanging on here. There's no question that politicians at the time just walked around this so-called protocol. The idea of which was to try and make trade between the UK and Northern Ireland as frictionless as possible, because unfortunately, by a fate of geography, this is the simplest way I can explain it, Ireland is also connected to Northern Ireland because it shares the same landmass. Unfortunately, Ireland itself is in the EU, Northern Ireland is not. That's what they're talking about right now. It may be, I mean, I've been reading loads of reports about it over the weekend, all taking various contrary views and so on. It's very, very difficult to know, but I feel as though this needs to be pushed forward. But as far as Brexit's concerned, I think as though, that the UK is better suited looking beyond the borders of the EU, because this is something which I think is going to run and run. No country, or at least the big people in the EU, want to see England succeed or the UK to succeed outside Europe, because it calls into question the whole project to start with. And of course, lots of people are doing that right now because it's becoming increasingly clear that a one-size-fits-all economic policy doesn't work over different countries.
I've got some shellacking for Andrew Bailey tomorrow, but we'll talk about that tomorrow, Michael. Thank you so much for your time.